Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Okay. We are going to wait for 1 more minute. Okay, I will start now. So last time we ended with German unification and the Industrial Revolution. Since most of you weren't here last time because I got disconnected, I will briefly talk about it before we continue. So German unification was led by Prussia. Like I said, most of the unification movements require the use of military forces, and this will certainly upset its neighboring countries. So both France and Austria declared war against Prussia, and both of them were defeated by Prussia. And shortly after, without any interference, Prussia and united all the German states. So this newly born German Empire saw chances to survive among other powerful European countries. And country development at that time requires trade, and trade requires colonies. And Germany soon realized that most of the places in the world that could be colonized were taken by Britain and France. So this is the Britain and its colonies, and France with its colonies. So Germans wanted the colonies, which means they will have to seize these places from the hands of French and British. So World War First. The World War First started with a chain of reactions. Austria wanted to conquer a small country beneath him called Serbia, and shortly after, countries brought their alliances to war, and we could see that after Austria there were Russia, after Russia there were Germany, and the France and the England. So there were the triple alliances, which were Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. On the other side, there were the triple entente countries, which were France, England, and Russia. So this is what the war looked like. So a few years before the war, the German army commander Count Schlieffen came up with a plan called the Schlieffen Plan. He explained an attacking plan if there would be a war in Europe. According to German's special geological position, the worst scenario would be both Russia and France declare war on Germany. So this would pinch Germany in the middle. So Schlieffen proposed that Germany should break one side first, then deal with the other. So let's see if Germany will attack France first or Russia. In comparison, Russia was weaker than France, but Russia is a huge country. Germany can't defeat Russia in a short amount of time. So Germany will use most of its army to attack France, then deal with Russia. It is known that Germany has 87 divisions of army, and 9 divisions will stay at Russian-German border, while most of the divisions, 78 divisions, would attack France in a huge advantage. And this huge army wouldn't attack France at Bulgaria, wouldn't attack France in one location. So Schlieffen believed that France would attack Germany directly. So the German army could take a detour, march via Belgium and capture Paris all at once. So this is the plan looks like. So the White Arrows were anticipated French offensive, and this was true. So the Schlieffen plan almost got its way. And of course, this plan isn't flawless. If anything went wrong, the whole thing will be sabotaged. As the plan progressing, something went wrong. The huge German army couldn't beat Belgium. The Belgian army relied on fortresses to defend the Germans. So the terrible situation as a front line panicked the Germans. They brought heavy cannons to the front line and using cannonballs to neutralize their panic. So the Belgian army blocked Germany at this very location, and Germany couldn't reach France at this point. So they used this heavy cannon. That's really big. Blessed by this heavy artillery, the Germans defeated the Belgians. And however, Belgium's resistance helped France to realize what the Germans had planned for. So the German assaults were crushed, and it turned the war into positional warfare, which means soldiers will have to stay in trenches for a long time. So to avoid positional warfare and gain advantages in the overall situation, both the Germans and French were trying to outflank each other. So they built trenches further and further until the trench had reached the sea. So in the dotted lines, we could see there are the newly built trenches that were supposed to outflank others, but since the others also build trenches, so they will have to build trenches even further. So until the trenches reach the ocean. And in such case, positional warfare was inevitable. The British called this race to the sea. So the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century thrived in Europe, again in a pathetic way. And this time, people were using industry to manufacture war machines. These were weapons invented during World War I, the poison gas, moderated machine guns, tanks, and submarines. So these were the major battles fought during the World War I. The war lasted for 4 years, and both sides failed to make any actual progress. Yes, yet most battles will end up with several 100,000 dead or wounded. Soldiers stay in the moist, uncomfortable trenches for a long time. They were unable to get any supplies on time because the supplies couldn't cross the artillery bombing area. So the British troops often get some storable biscuits. So these biscuits were extremely hard and stiff. The British said that if they put a stick onto the biscuit, it will be a powerful hammer. So most soldiers suffer from shell shock, which was a disturbance caused by artillery bombardment. Some soldiers would shot themselves in the toe so that they would go to the hospital instead of the next attack. So with this situation, the soldiers as well as civilians inside the country started to revolt. So the Russian Revolution. In March 1917, women textile workers in Petrograd, which was the capital of the Russian Empire, led a citywide strike. In the next 5 days, nearly 200,000 workers swarmed the streets shouting, "Down with the war!" Because war, the countries will have to rely on heavy taxes that people pay to pay for huge war debts. So the civilians inside the country was as hard as the soldiers at the front line. So in this revolt, the Russian Empire ordered soldiers to shoot the revolutionaries, and the soldiers refused to shoot the people and sided with these revolutionaries. The local protests exploded into a general revolution. It was called the March Revolution, and it forced Tsar, or emperor of the Russian Empire, Nicholas II, to give up his throne. A year later, revolutionary executed Nicholas and his entire family. So next, Alexander Kerensky led a temporary government. He had decided to continue fighting in World War I, and this cost him the support of both soldiers and civilians. They don't want war anymore. As the war dragged on, conditions inside Russia worsened. Angry peasants demanded land, city workers grew more radical, and socialists competed for power, and they formed Soviets. So it was at this very moment, Lenin and the Bolsheviks soon gained control of the Petrograd Soviet, as well as Soviets in other major Russian cities. So Lenin's slogan, peace, land, and bread gained widespread appeal. Lenin then decided to take action. So, without warnings, armed Soviets stormed the palace of Petrograd, calling themselves the Bolshevik Red Guards, and they took over government officials and arrested the leader of the temporary government. So the Soviets then took control of the country, and Soviet Russia later left the war and signed a peace pact with Germany. America joined World War first. So Germans proposed unrestricted submarine warfare in 1917. It means that German submarines could sink without warning any ships in the water around Britain. They knew it might lead to war with the United States because they might accidentally sunk some American ships. But they gambled that the naval blockade would starve Britain into defeat before the United States could mobilize its army. So later, German U-boats, the German submarines, sunk 3 American ships. The former president Woodrow Wilson protested against this action, but he heard no replies. So in February 1917, another German action pushed the United States even closer to war. Officials intercepted a telegram written by German Foreign Secretary Arthur Zimmermann, stating that Germany would help Mexico reconquer the land it had lost to the United States if Mexico could ally itself with Germany. So Germany was hoping that Mexico could attack America before they sent troops to Europe. So on April 1917, 2 months later, President Wilson asked the Congress to declare war on Germany. The United States entered the war on the side of the Allies. So, the end of the World War First. With the arrival of 2 million more American troops, the Allied forces began to advance steadily toward Germany. Soon, the Bulgarians and then the Ottoman Turks surrounded. There was the Germany allies, and in October 1918, revolution swept through Austria-Hungary, and in Germany, soldiers publicly turned on their emperor. On November the 9th, 1918, German Emperor William II stepped down, and Germany declared itself a republic called the Weimar Republic. And so a representative of the new German government met with French commander Marshal Foch on the train near Paris. The two signed the agreement to stop fighting. The train was later known as a Foch carriage, and I hint this will be a very important information. The Foch carriage. So on November the 11th, 11 a.m., World War First came to an end. Oh, I see somebody raise their hand.
I apologize for coming a bit late. I had another class.
Okay, that's fine. So we just talked about the World War First and how the war started. So I will briefly talk about it again. So the Germans the German Empire was a newly born empire. So he wanted colonies like the rest of the European countries, but most of the colonies were taken by Britain and France. So to be able to gain any colonies, so German wished to start this war, and yet Germany lost. So this is basically what happened in the World War First. So this is the casualties in World War First. So the Germans suffered 1.8 million losses in the war, and Russia suffered 1.7 million, and then the third was France, which was 1.3 million. It was a huge number in total. If we added the total casualties, there were about 80 million people who died on the battlefield, and this does not include the civilians. And the president of the United States says that this is a war to end all war. Well, at least it was supposed to be. Oh. Okay, so next we have the Treaty of Exile. Britain, France, and America were concerned with national security. They wanted to strip Germany of its war-making power. As a result of a serious compromises, the Treaty of Exile between Germany and the Allies was signed on June 28, 1919. As a result, the League of Nations was created by the treaty to keep peace among nations. So this League of Nations is the predecessor of today's United Nations. And so the Treaty of Exile, United States President Woodrow Wilson wanted to achieve peace in the future. And the British was wondering how would they prevent the next war. And the French was simply thinking that they need to punish the Germans as hard as they can. So most of the United States president's appeal was either denied or ignored because United States simply joined war in 1918, the last year of the war, and there were not much contributions that United States gave. So the countries in Europe was annoyed by this by United States actions. So the final goal of the treaty was to punish Germany. Among all defeated countries, only Germany was severely punished because the others were either divided or simply gone. Germany lost many territories, paid a huge amount of debts to the winning countries, and was only allowed to have a small army to defend itself. So this is a post-World War First map of Europe, and we could see the Austria Empire split into several small countries. There were Austria and Hungary, and some of its territory formed Yugoslavia, and some of its territory formed Czechoslovakia. So Poland was another result of the World War I. Russia lost its land and formed Poland, and Germany lost some of its land in the Rhineland area. So next, I'm going to talk about totalitarianism and the propaganda. So first, we should know, what does totalitarianism means. This term describes a government that takes total, centralized state control over every aspect of public and private life. Just like the absolute monarchy we talked about in the previous classes, totalitarianism directly challenges the value depicted by Western democracies, which rejects reason, freedom, human dignity, and value of the individual. Countries in Europe that applied totalitarianism were Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. So now I will introduce a girlfriend of totalitarian leaders, which is propaganda. So let's see some examples first. So this is the Soviet Union and Stalin. And then Hitler. Here Hitler said, "Wer niemand das Schicksal der Nation in die Hände," which means we are going to hold the fate of our nation in our hands. So and in the last, he said, Hitler when Reiches Präsident, which means Hitler wants to be the national, the empire's president. So this was his election propaganda. And then the fascism and the Nazi Germany. So we could see that it's actually very similar to the Soviet Union. See, it's actually very similar. Well, anyway, totalitarian states utilizes propaganda, biased or incomplete information used to sway people to accept certain beliefs or actions. And also it includes brainwash. So none of the publications, films, arts, or even music were allowed to publish without the permission of the state. So they use the strong censorship to cooperate with propaganda. So the ideas of totalitarian states were surprisingly scattered to other countries. In England, the local communists planned several strikes in the factories for better treatment and higher wages. Meanwhile, a member of the Labour Party called Oswald Mosley established the British Union of Fascists. So Oswald Mosley ended up in prison, and he was released in 1943. And next we have the Great Depression. After the Treaty of Exile was signed, Germany faced enormous economic problems, burdens with heavy debts to the Allies and with other economic problems. Germans just simply printed more money. So the value of the money in Germany fell dramatically, and severe inflation had begun. So the Germans needed more and more money to buy even the most basic stuff. So, for example, in Berlin, a loaf of bread cost less than a mark. In 1918, it had grown more than 160 marks in 1922, and 200 billion marks by the late 1923, only 1 year later. So people took baskets of money to buy food. And when there was a time the value of the money was even less than the value of the paper. So there were really money really means nothing. So they have no values, and this was a picture of kids playing with paper money. And meanwhile, the American economy thrived. Despite the prosperities, several weaknesses in the U.S. economy caused problems. And these include the uneven distribution of wealth, overproduction by the businesses and agricultures. And the fact that many Americans were buying less because they don't have any money. Most factories were too poor to buy the goods being produced. The factories were unable to sell their goods, so they fired some of these workers, and the workers, they don't have any money because they were fired, so they couldn't. Hello? Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay. I thought somebody was asking a question. Okay. So people, they lost their jobs, so they have no money to buy any goods. And if people couldn't buy any goods, the factories will have to make so many products, so they don't need so much stuff, and so they kept firing people, and people and even more people lost their jobs, and they couldn't buy productions, and so the factories will have to cut more stuffs. So this is a healthy relationship. So as more workers lost their jobs, families you guys' idea. The danger sign of weakening of the factories and farms should have warned people against gambling their money on the stock market, and yet no one noticed this warning. So in September 1929, some investors began to think the stock prices was unnaturally high. They started selling their stocks, believing the price will soon go down. Soon, the gradual lowering of the stock prices had become a waterfall. Everyone was trying to sell the stocks, and no one wanted to buy. So the market collapsed, and all their money were gone. And this man, he said, $100 will buy this car, must have cash, lost all on the stock market. The collapse of the American economy sent shockwaves around the world. World trade dropped by 65%, and this contributes further to the economic downward. unemployment rates raised dramatically high. So the President Franklin Roosevelt in 1932, the first presidential election after the Depression had begun, the U.S. voters elected Franklin Roosevelt as the president. So he was a former mayor of the New York City, and he was wandering on the street with $100 with many $100 bills in his pockets. So whenever he come across with a poor man, this mayor gave him $100 and told him to buy some to buy something. So the president Roosevelt he understood how the economic depression was produced. So he immediately began a program of government reform that he called the New Deal. So large public works projects help to provide jobs for the unemployment. So the government, they provided jobs for the workers. So the workers will then have money to buy goods. Government agencies gave financial help to businesses and farms. And so this New Deal introduced by the president did eventually reform the American economic system. It had brought America's economic growth back on track. So these are some public works. They provide millions of jobs to ordinary American workers. And next we have the World War II. In the late 1930s, Nazi Germany annexes many surrounding countries. The League of Nations was supposed to deal with these kind of situations, but both Britain and France sought appeasement. They wouldn't dare to support another war. So the Prime Minister of Britain, Chamberlain, signed an agreement with Hitler. So it was an agreement stated that Germany was not allowed to annex more land, and these lands were enough. If Germany make the next move, then both France and England would declare war on Germany. So when Chamberlain went back to England, he said, I made agreement with Hitler and there will be peace for all time. So we could see that this is the post-World War I situation in Europe, and Germany, they lost so many land. So Hitler, when he became the Führer of Germany, he proposes this idea of Lebensraum. In English, it was called the living room. So the Germans will have will need more place, more area, more space to live. So they started to conquer other countries, and we could see that East Prussia, which is another land of Germany, and it was blocked by Poland. It was split by Poland. So this place is called Danzig, which is Polish territory. And so Germany won this land, and Hitler asked Poland to give up this land, and Poland said no. So Germany declared war on Poland, and meanwhile, the British and the Britain and France both declared war on Germany. After they declared war, they didn't actually do anything. They just watched Germany and the Soviet Union partitioned Poland. So the next, Nazi Germany planned this attack on France. In May 1940, Hitler began a dramatic sweep through the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. And from there, they moved across France and reached the country's northern coastline in 10 days. This was the same strategy Germans used in World War I. This was a Schlieffen plan, and this is how Germany attacked France in World War II. And we could see that it's basically the same. It didn't work in World War I, but it worked this time. Soon, resistance in France began to crumble. In June 14th, Germans had occupied Paris, and accepting the inevitable, French leaders surrounded on June 22nd, 1940. So they surrendered within 38 days. And so Hitler found the Foch carriage, which is a train where Germany surrounded in World War I. And in this special carriage, Nazi Germany accepted France's surrender. What an irony. So Hitler then prepared to attack Britain, but just like Napoleon, Hitler's troops were unable to cross the English Channel. So Hitler began to focus on the eastern front line. In the mid-1941, Germany surprise attacked the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was not prepared for this attack, although it had the largest. The Soviet Union has the largest army in the world, but its troops were neither well equipped nor well trained. Germans quickly pushed 500 miles deep inside the Soviet Union. As the Soviet troops retreated, they burned and destroyed everything in the enemy's path. The Russians had used this scorched earth strategy to defeat Napoleon, and will be the key to defeat Germans as well. So the Soviet Union's stubborn resistance dragged warfare to winter. As temperature fell, the German troops were only in summer uniforms. They didn't prepare their supplies for winter, so they prepared to retreat. Ignoring Napoleon's winter defeat in Russia 130 years before, Hitler gave a stunning order: no retreat. As a result, Germany lost heavily in the winter battles. The Soviet Union saw chances and conducted a counterbreak on Germany. So this is the farthest Germany advances. We could see the three most important cities: Stalingrad, Leningrad, and Moscow was still in the hands of the Russian, and Germany failed to conquer these three cities. The invasion of Normandy was the largest land and sea attack in history. The Germans used machine guns, rocket launchers, and cannons to block the attack. They sheltered behind concrete walls 3 feet thick. These fortresses were called the Atlantic Wall, and not surprisingly, the Allies took heavy casualties. Among the American forces alone, more than 2,700 men died during the landing day. Despite heavy losses, the Allies held the beachhead, and within a month of the invasion, more than 1 million additional troops had landed the German-occupied France. So then the Allies marched onto Paris. By September, they had liberated France, Belgium, and Luxembourg. Then they set their sights on Germany, Berlin. In the late March 1945, about 3 million Allied soldiers approached Berlin from the southwest. Another 6 million Soviet troops approached from the east. By April 25th, 1945, the Soviets had surrounded the capital and were bombing the city with artillery fire. On April 29th, Hitler married his longtime companion, Eva Braun, in an underground headquarters beneath the Shadow City. The next day, Hitler and Eva committed suicide. Their bodies were burned outside the headquarters. So, Allied General Eisenhower accepted the unconditional surrender of the German military. President Roosevelt unfortunately did not live to witness the long-awaited victory. He had died on April 12th, and his successor, Harry Truman, as the next president, received the news of the Nazi surrender. On May 9th, the surrender was officially signed in Berlin. The United States and other Allied powers celebrated VE Day, which is Victory in Europe Day. After nearly 6 years of fighting, the war in Europe had ended. So our hostility was caused by different political ideas between America and the Soviet Union. This would lead to a nearly half-century conflict called the Cold War. And so this is the end of our lecture. Do you have any questions about all 4 lectures that we discussed? If you don't have any questions, so this is the end of our lecture.
Is this the last class?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you for teaching us the whole time.
You got it. So if you don't have any questions, you may leave.